You've heard it before, silence is powerful. And it's true, silence can command respect. It can create mystery. It can make people wonder what you're thinking, who you really are, and what you might do next. The greatest leaders, thinkers, and even warriors throughout history have used silence as a weapon, sharp, deliberate, and unforgettable. But let me ask you something. Is silence enough? Is staying quiet on its own really the move that gives you the upper hand? Or have we just romanticized it so much that we've forgotten its limits? Because the truth is, silence, when used without direction, can become weakness in disguise. That's why in today's video, I'm going to give you something better, something more evolved, something that blends the timeless wisdom of Stoicism with modern psychology and a strategic presence so strong it doesn't just leave an impression, it rewires the way people think about you. This isn't about talking more. It's about showing up differently. If you're here because you want to shift your energy, build lasting influence, and step into a version of yourself that commands quiet respect without chasing attention, you're in the right place. But before we go deeper, I have a small request. If you're ready to master your presence, hit the like button right now and drop a comment that says, "I use my presence wisely." Say it, write it, own it. Because mastering your presence is where power truly begins. Part 1. The power and limits of silence. Let's start with silence. Because before we can talk about a strategy that's more powerful, we need to understand why silence has been seen as a power move for centuries. The Stoics knew this better than anyone. Epictetus once said, "Silence is safer than speech." And if you've ever regretted saying something you didn't mean or reacted too quickly, then you already know why. Silence protects you. It gives you space. It lets the storm pass before you say something that you can't take back. But more than that, silence makes people uncomfortable. Why? Because people are used to noise. Think about it. We live in a world where everyone is constantly talking, posting, explaining, justifying, trying to be heard. So when you choose to say nothing, that silence creates a vacuum. And here's where the real psychology kicks in. People hate a vacuum, so they rush to fill it. Not with your words, but with their own assumptions. They project their thoughts, their fears, their hopes, even their insecurities, onto you. And now, instead of defending yourself or over-explaining, you've just gained quiet control over the narrative without lifting a finger. Let me give you a real-life example. Picture this. You're in a heated argument with someone. They're emotional, maybe even insulting. They're trying to get a reaction. Most people would fire back, get defensive, try to clarify their side. But you say nothing. You meet their eyes. Calm. Collected. You let the words hang in the air. And what happens? They start to feel exposed. Their words echo back at them unchallenged, but also unsupported. They start to second-guess themselves. You didn't lose your cool. You didn't even need to engage. And suddenly the power dynamic has shifted entirely. That's the power of silence. In relationships, in business, in conflict, even in casual conversations, silence stands out because it breaks the pattern. In a noisy room, the one who speaks least often commands the most attention. People lean in. They want to know more. They start thinking, "What's he thinking?" Or "Why isn't she saying anything?" That curiosity, that mental space you occupy in their mind is power. It's what I call psychological gravity. You pull others in without even trying, and that's exactly why silence works. And this is critical only when it's used with purpose. Because here's the other side of the coin. When silence becomes a default instead of a strategy, it loses its edge. Silence that's used out of fear, avoidance, or indecision doesn't create power, it creates distance. And worse, it creates confusion. See, silence relies on contrast. It's powerful because it's rare. It works because people aren't expecting it. But if you're always the one who disappears, if you're always silent, always withholding, always mysterious, eventually people stop being intrigued. They stop wondering. They start assuming. He must not care. She must be done. Maybe they're just avoiding the truth. And now, instead of controlling the narrative, you've left it completely open and other people fill in the blanks for you, often in ways that aren't in your favor. So yes, silence is powerful, but only when it's intentional. Silence without strategy is just passivity. It's not strength. It's not stoicism. It's not influence. It's just absence. And absence, if not used correctly, turns into irrelevance. This is where a lot of people get it wrong. They think if I just go silent, they'll come back. They'll respect me. They'll feel the loss. And sometimes they do, but more often they just adapt. They move on. Because you left a space and they learn to live without it. That's why silence needs a second layer. It needs presence. It needs intention. It needs follow-through. You can't just disappear and expect people to feel your power. You have to choose when to go quiet, and just as importantly, you have to know when to act. So if you're using silence right now, whether in a relationship, a negotiation, or your everyday interactions, I want you to ask yourself, am I silent with purpose, or am I silent because I'm avoiding something, because there's a big difference? And in the next part of this video, we're going to explore that difference in full. We're going to talk about the presence you bring when you say nothing and why how you show up speaks louder than anything you could ever say. But for now, if this part has spoken to you, I want you to take a moment, hit that like button, and drop this phrase in the comments, I master my silence with intention. Say it. Write it. Because if you're going to be silent, make sure it's the kind of silence that echoes. Part 2. Presence, the upgrade to silence. So now that we've explored silence and its psychological power, it's time to elevate the game. Because here's the truth. Silence creates mystery, but presence creates impact. Let me say that again. Presence is what makes you unforgettable. We live in a world where attention is currency. Everyone's trying to be seen, loud voices, flashy moves, constant noise. But the people who truly command attention, they don't shout, they don't chase. They exist with intention. Presence is the art of saying everything without saying a word. Think about someone who walks into a room and doesn't need to speak for you to notice them. Maybe it's the way they move, the calm in their face, the posture, the stillness. It's not arrogance, it's not ego, it's energy. And it speaks louder than any introduction ever could. Now here's where Stoicism gives us the blueprint. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In other words, what's going on inside of you eventually shows on the outside. Your presence is your inner world turned outward. It's your mindset, your discipline, your clarity, made visible through your body, your eyes, your energy. When your thoughts are calm, grounded, and deliberate, so is your presence, and that presence carries weight. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been around someone who didn't need to prove anything, who made everyone around them feel a little more alert, a little more measured just by being there? That's presence. It's not about being the center of attention. It's about drawing attention without effort. There's a gravity to it. And here's the beauty, it's a skill. It's something you can cultivate, refine, and master. It starts with how you carry yourself. Stand tall, not stiff. Move slowly, not nervously. Make eye contact, not to dominate, but to connect. Breathe deeply. Stay still. Let others fill the space with noise you don't need to. Because when you're grounded, when you're centered, people feel that, even if they don't fully understand why they feel it. Here's something I've learned in my own life, both personally and professionally. The most powerful men in the room aren't the loudest. They're the ones who don't need to speak to be respected. They don't explain their worth. They embody it. That's presence. Now let's go deeper. Silence can get you noticed. But presence makes people remember you. Silence is temporary. Presence lingers. It stays with people even after you've left the room. It becomes a story they tell themselves later, like, there was something about him. I don't know what it was, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. And here's where dark psychology supports what the Stoics have always taught: humans are wired to respond to nonverbal cues. Body language, posture, Micro-expressions, stillness, energy. Before anyone processes your words, they feel your presence. And if your presence is calm, confident, composed, it immediately sets the tone. People assume you're in control. They believe you're competent. They start adjusting to you, not the other way around. Let me give you a real-world example. Let's say you're walking into a meeting or a family gathering or even just a social event. You don't speak first. You walk in slowly. You scan the room calmly. You offer a relaxed nod, a handshake that's firm, not forced. And then you wait. You've already said more with your energy than others will say in 20 minutes of small talk. And when you finally do speak, people listen. Because your energy said, "I'm worth listening to." That's the advantage of presence. But here's the catch: you can't fake it. Presence comes from within. You can't just copy the body language without doing the inner work. You need to be clear about who you are. You need to trust yourself enough to not overcompensate. You need to have enough discipline to hold your ground when others start to fumble. That's why Stoicism is so essential. It teaches self-mastery. It's not about pretending to be calm, it's about being calm. Because when the chaos around you increases, your inner stillness becomes your greatest weapon, and people feel it, even when you say nothing at all. So if silence is the first step toward reclaiming your power, presence is the level up. It's what makes your silence meaningful and your actions memorable. Now let me ask you, how do you show up when you walk into a room? Do people feel your energy, or do you blend into the background? Because your presence is more than just posture and eye contact. It's the reflection of your beliefs, your preparation, your self-respect. And here's the good news: if you're ready to master it, it starts right now. So pause for a moment, take a breath, and in the comments below, write this declaration: I command presence through discipline. Because you're not just learning to be silent anymore. You're learning to be felt. Part 3. Energetic imprinting. Let me tell you something most people overlook. You don't just leave an impression by what you say, or even what you do. You leave an imprint, an energetic fingerprint by who you are in the moment. Your presence doesn't stop when you walk out of the room. In fact, if you've mastered it, that's when it truly begins to echo. Because presence isn't about being seen. It's about being felt. There's a kind of energy you carry, subtle, invisible, but incredibly real. And the moment you step into a space, that energy speaks for you. People can feel it in the way you walk, the stillness in your face, the depth in your gaze, the steadiness of your breathing. You might not say a word, but your energy says, "I know who I am. I don't need to prove it." And long after you've left, that's what people remember. Let's call this energetic imprinting, the lasting emotional mark you leave behind. Now I want you to think back to a time when you met someone who had that kind of presence. Maybe it was a mentor, a boss, even a stranger you crossed paths with briefly. They didn't dominate the conversation. They didn't try to impress you. But somehow their energy shifted the room. You couldn't put your finger on it, but it lingered. Even days later, you'd catch yourself thinking about them and wondering why. That's energetic imprinting, and it's something the Stoics understood instinctively. They knew that power wasn't about volume, it was about vibration. Marcus Aurelius didn't need to shout to lead armies. Seneca didn't build wisdom through loud speeches. Their strength was built in silence, self-control, and steady presence, and that presence outlived them. So how do you develop that kind of energy? It begins with alignment. When your thoughts, your emotions, and your body are in sync, people feel it. But when you're disconnected inside, when your words say one thing, but your eyes say another, people feel that too. Humans are emotional creatures. We might not understand why we're drawn to certain people, but we are. And often we're not reacting to their words, we're reacting to their state. Energetic presence is a state. It's not a performance. It's cultivated in the gym of self-discipline, in the quiet mornings when you reflect instead of reaching for distractions, in the choices you make when no one's watching. You build it by honoring your values, by calming your nervous system, by learning to be comfortable in your own stillness. And the more centered you are, the more others will feel it. You'll walk into a room and people won't just notice you, they'll sense you. Here's a powerful example. Imagine a man who walks into a conference room. He doesn't speak first, he sits calmly. He makes eye contact not to intimidate but to observe. His posture is relaxed but grounded. He listens more than he talks. And when he does speak, it's brief but sharp. Everyone remembers him. Why? Because his energy was clean, clear, intentional. He didn't flood the room with words. He didn't chase attention. He left behind something deeper, a sense of stability that others felt safe around and curious about. That's the power of energetic imprinting. So let me ask you, when you leave a room, what remains? Do people feel your absence like a silence that makes them think? Or are you just forgotten the moment you walk away? It's not about impressing people. It's about impacting them on a level that words can't reach. Because here's the thing. Noise fades. Energy remains. And you get to choose the kind of energy you leave behind. So, if you want to be unforgettable, if you want your presence to carry weight that lingers, stop focusing on what you say and start focusing on what you radiate. Build stillness. Build clarity. Build that internal compass that points to your values no matter what room you walk into. Leave energy, not noise. And if that's the kind of man you're ready to become, take a moment right now. Hit the like button. And in the comments type, I leave an imprint without speaking. Say it. Believe it. Embody it. Because the people who truly change the room are the ones who don't have to announce themselves to do it. Part 4. Action. The missing piece. Let's get one thing clear. Silence without action is just hiding. Presence without purpose. That's just theater. You see all the mystery, all the energy, all the gravity you build through silence and presence. It means nothing if it isn't backed by deliberate, purposeful action. And this is where so many men fall short. They think going quiet is the move. They think standing still looks powerful. But then, they never move. And in the end, they're not stoic. They're stuck. Let me remind you of something the philosopher king Marcus Aurelius once said. You must become an old man in good time if you wish to be an old man long. Translation. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop hiding behind overthinking. Start living your philosophy. Because Stoicism isn't just about staying calm. It's about knowing when to act and having the courage to do it with precision. Let me paint a picture for you. You're in the middle of a heated disagreement. Someone is raising their voice, throwing blame, trying to get under your skin. You stay composed. You don't take the bait. That's step one. That's silence with control. But then what? The weak man either blows up eventually or disappears completely. But the man with stoic discipline, he waits, watches, and when the moment is right, he speaks one sentence that shifts the tone, or makes one move that redirects the entire situation. That's powerful action. It's not random. It's not emotional. It's rooted in clarity, timing, and intention. And it's exactly what sets you apart in a world full of reactivity. So let me ask you something personal. When was the last time your actions did the talking for you? Not just loud moves to prove a point. Not desperate texts. Not reactive replies. I'm talking about that one quiet, confident step that changed the dynamic because it came from strength, not fear. Because here's the truth. Words can be dismissed. Presence can be ignored. But action, that's hard to forget. Especially when it's unexpected. Especially when it's clean. And especially when it aligns with your values. Because every time you act, you're making a statement not just to the world, but to yourself. This is who I am. This is what I stand for. And over time, those actions become your legacy. They become the proof that you are who you say you are without ever having to say it. That's why I say this all the time. My actions define me, not my opinions, not my social media posts, not even the way I speak. It's the way I move, the way I show up, the things I do, especially when no one's watching. That's what shapes a man's character. Let's take this even deeper. From a psychological standpoint, people don't trust noise. They trust patterns. When they see you show up with consistency, discipline, and purpose, especially when you're calm under pressure, they start to perceive you as dependable, competent, leader material. You don't need to ask for respect. They offer it quietly. And even if they never say it out loud, they feel it every time they see you act with clarity and conviction. Let me leave you with a final idea. There's a difference between movement and motion. A lot of people are busy. Few people are effective. Action isn't about doing more. It's about doing the right things at the right time and letting those moments echo louder than your words ever could. So if you're in a space in your life where you've been thinking too much, waiting for permission, or sitting on the edge of a decision you already know you need to make, this is your call. It's time to stop thinking about being powerful and start acting like it. You already know what needs to be done. Now do it. And when you do, when your actions speak for you, watch how everything else starts to shift. Your presence becomes sharper, your silence becomes stronger, and your legacy begins to build itself. So right now, I want you to make a declaration. Drop it in the comments below, "My actions define me." Because if you want the world to take you seriously, start by becoming the man who follows through. So now you understand silence, presence, and energy alone are not enough without aligned action. In the next part, we go deeper. Into the psychology behind perception, into the strategy behind being seen without chasing visibility, and most importantly, how you use your energy to shape your legacy. Subscribe now so you don't miss part 2 of this journey to self-mastery. And drop this in the comments before you go. My presence moves before I speak.